Your hosts have earned a reputation as fierce and effective advocates inside and outside of the courtroom. Both partners are experienced trial attorneys who have been board certified in family law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization.
All right. Thanks for tuning in to For Better or Worse, or Divorce podcast, where we provide you tips and insight how to navigate divorce and child custody situations. So I'm Jake Gilbreath. I'm one of the managing partners at Walters Gilbreath. And today is our second episode in our Divorces and Businesses series. And we're joined by Jason Snell, who is the founder of the Snell Law Firm in Austin, Texas. Jason is board certified in civil and business law, and he's a litigator in town. And we felt he'd be a great addition and provide a fresh perspective from us on the topic of businesses and divorce for all our listeners. So welcome, Jason. So
I'm pleased to be here. Thank you. It's my first podcast, and I assume that after this drops, it's going to go viral, and I'll do many more podcasts all over the world.
You know, we'll be super famous after this. So I gave a little bit of a spoiler, but I'll, like I do with a lot of guests. So tell us who you are. Tell us what you do. I said a little bit of it there, but tell us about yourself.
So I'm Jason Snell of the Snell Law Firm here in Austin. It's myself and 4 other attorneys, and we are business and commercial litigators. So all we do is handle litigation matters, usually business disputes, commercial disputes that end up in court. And I've been here in Austin for about 16 years, and I've had my own law firm for those number of years. And before that, I was in New York City, where I practiced litigation as well, and then before that in Dallas. So I'm pleased to be on the show. Thanks for having me, Jake. I know we've been friends for a long time, but the first time we've done a podcast together.
Yeah, I was thinking, because I was trying to figure out how we met, because I think it may have been at the courthouse. But or I'm the jerk, and I don't remember if there's a better story than that. So how did we meet?
I know we ran into each other over the years at numerous bar events and at the courthouse, but I remember specifically you had just finished trying a case, and I had just finished trying a case, and we were both eating lunch at Ranch 616, and you were with Sarah, and I was with somebody else, and we started talking, and we agreed during that lunch that we were going to start trying to find a way to work together, and I think that's when we became good friends, and that was probably 10 or 11 years ago. So, but anyway, that's at least my memory.
Well, the litigators. Yeah, the litigators. Well, it's now my memory too. So, the litigators always run into each other. At the courthouse, and of course, we're going back in person in Austin in a bit. But at the courthouse or on Zoom or what have you. Tell me about New York how they go Dallas to New York to Austin. I don't think I'd heard that story before.
Well, I graduated from Texas Tech School of Law in 1999, and I moved to Dallas, where I had already accepted a position as an associate at a larger firm in Dallas. Bunch of really good people at this firm, and I'm still in touch with them now. And in fact, 2 of my attorneys I hired away from that firm, but I didn't think Dallas was the right city for me, and I didn't believe that working at a large law firm was the right environment for me. So I moved to a bigger city, to a bigger law firm, and I like big cities. I just don't like big law firms. So I left Dallas after about 3 years, and I moved to New York City, and I continued litigation. I took the New York bar and passed it. And I really enjoyed it. That was a great experience. The best lawyers in the world and the worst lawyers in the world all in one place. And you never know who you're going to get. But it was a great time and a great experience. And so I did that for about 5 years, and then moved to Austin. And so,
what brought you to Austin?
Well, I met Melissa, who's now my wife. I met her on the Upper West Side in New York. And after dating for about 7 or 8 months, she had already decided she was going to move to Austin. And I said, well, it's nice to know you, but I'm never leaving New York City. That's where I'm going to live the rest of my life. Well, one thing leads to another. We ended up leaving New York City together in the same moving truck and moving to Austin together. So now we're married for 13 years, 2 kids. So
smart man, good move. Yeah, she's You and I both have our wives are our better half. So,
That's absolutely true, especially in my case. But
well, so tell me about, talk to us, I guess, about the litigation side of businesses versus businesses, or, business partners going through litigation or what have you. Then we'll start talking some about family law. But I know the you come into my world, son, particularly whenever we pull you in on a divorce and have some business aspects. But talk to me first about kind of the bread and butter of your law firm. What's that look like?
well, my practice involves. I get involved when a deal has gone bad. So it's either a construction deal gone bad, a real estate deal gone bad, or a business relationship gone bad. So I don't deal with a whole lot of success stories. Of course, sometimes we can resolve a dispute such that it feels like a success story, but we don't get involved in a situation where everyone is happy. And so my father-in-law told me one time, he said, a partnership is more difficult to get out of than a marriage. And I always think about that when I talk with you because, our practices are similar in the sense that you're dealing with relationships that have come apart and you've got to negotiate or litigate through that. And I deal with relationships that fall apart as well and come apart, just a different kind of relationship. So I business divorces, business relationships gone bad, not too dissimilar than your practice, Jake. And you're right, we do work together a lot, and we always have the same kind of issues. Like I know that whenever I need a business valuation expert or a forensic accountant or someone like that, I can call you, and you're going to have 5 or 6 names for me because the issues that you deal with, such as those, are very similar to what almost every one of my cases involves. So
It's interesting that your father-in-law kind of said it that way because I always compare, yeah, at least the property side of it to a business transaction, right? Obviously, if you have kids, it's a much different. Things look a lot different in a divorce or custody arrangement than sometimes we have folks come in and they don't have kids and it's still very emotional, just like a business partnership is emotional. But I tell them this is a business transaction at the end of the day. I think sometimes it helps people hear that because it's trying to step back from the emotional side of it. Your clients too, right? Can sometimes help move forward. But I assume you have emotional clients just like we have emotional clients. I mean, I love my law partner dearly. I would be very hurt if Brian and if it didn't work out between the two of us. I don't think that would result in us suing each other or what have you. Hopefully not. But it would. I mean, Brian's family. We've been partners for some time, and so I assume your clients, it's probably an emotional, difficult time if there's been a partnership that's gone south.
I have clients that are all over the spectrum on that. So, I have some very sophisticated, very successful clients who will come to me with a business dispute, and the reaction can be purely emotional. So the business economic side of it is secondary to the emotional side of it. And then sometimes the inverse is true, and you never really know what you're going to get. A lot of that's based on personality, and a lot of that is based also on the person's experience with litigation or experience in the legal world. So someone's been through the litigation process before tends to be a little less emotional about it than someone who's in it for the first time. Just being sued or being a party to the lawsuit for a lot of people, probably for most people, especially the first time around, is incredibly stressful, emotional, can be frightening. And those are all emotions that tend to be very negative and gin up a very strong response. So a lot of times on the front end in meeting a client and counseling a client, a lot of it is providing some assurances that I'm going to help them through it. I'm going to give them good advice one step at a time, and there is an end, and we are going to get to it, get through all that successfully. And people want to know that, understand it. So it's a bit of a counselor in the beginning, almost always. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I kind of find myself doing the same, telling people. I always think the worst, and I think you agree with this, the worst advice a lawyer can give at the beginning of it is saying, because we want to say it, but I think the worst thing you can tell a client is just go, well, everything's going to be fine.
Right.
Because it's not going to be fine. You're in a lawsuit. That is not a fine situation.
Yeah, well, if you say that, and I'm agreeing with you, but one of the reasons why a good attorney should never say that is there, you never have any idea what that means to the client. What is everything is going to be fine? What does that really mean? Because success is viewed so differently by almost everyone, or how it should work out looks different for almost everybody.
Right. I think what they really want to hear is we're going to be there for you. I mean, it's going to be because overall it is going to be fine, right? You're going to get through the lawsuit if a business or breakup of the partnership in your world, or if you're going through a divorce, there is light at the end of the tunnel. I always I try to be pretty open with my clients. I've been through a divorce. I try to be really open with my clients that I agree that it sucks and it sucks a lot going through a divorce, but we're going to get you through it and we're going to be there for you through the thick and thin. And yeah, it's like you said, it's kind of one step at a time because it's huge. I've been involved, through, like I said, through a divorce. There's been other times where we've had to get lawyers involved for various different reasons in the business. It is incredibly stressful. On some of the stuff I've had to deal with in the business is more stressful than going through seeing what my client's going through a divorce or going through my own divorce. It's just it's a lot of it produces a lot of anxiety. That's probably why too. I'm going through my divorce. It was no fun, but at least I knew the process. I mean, for most people, it's their first lawsuit with you, or they're in my office, it's the first custody case or divorce they've been through. And, you can Google it and read all the horror stories if you want, but that doesn't help the situation at all.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the idea that someone is coming to me or to you in what may be one of the more stressful moments of his or her life is a weighty thing for an attorney, but it's always an important moment for me to sit down and talk with this person and try to establish the framework of how we're going to go from A to B and what it's going to look and feel like, establish what a win looks like or what a probable outcome looks like. And then one of the things I always try to tell my clients is I know you're going to be super stressed. I know you're going to have a lot of anxiety, but I'm going to bear your stress and anxiety too. So, and I'm paid to do that. So if you're doing it and I'm doing it, then I'm not sure that you're getting your money's worth. So just let me do it. Let me bear the stress and you try to put it out of your mind. And that way you're getting your money's worth. Now, almost nobody can do that, but that's my way of saying I'm going to empathize and I'm going to be there for you. And I don't know, I hope people understand that I mean that and it makes them feel a little better. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, talk to me. Let's sort of transition to, people coming to you. Let's say they're not in a lawsuit yet. It's no different than somebody comes to me and they're thinking about divorce, or, their spouse has brought it up, or they're in marriage counseling and think things aren't going the way they want it to, and they just want to know, kind of reducing that anxiety, know what it looks like moving forward. Do people ever come to you kind of before the lawsuit gets filed, but they're concerned about where things are going with a contract or a business?
They do, but not as often as one would think, because typically I call myself just like a one-off high-stakes litigator. So people come to me usually when when they need to sue someone immediately, or they're about to get sued, or they have been sued. And so that doesn't happen all that often, but it does happen. And you're right. When someone comes to me, I can talk to them about what to expect, and what if they do get sued, what that is going to look like, and what they're going to need to do, and explain to them the legal process. So that's, in those circumstances, I view that as kind of my job. And also, if someone hasn't been sued or hasn't filed a lawsuit, they may need to see some other kind of attorney, and I bet you do that too. And I know divorce attorneys will often send potential clients to estate planning attorneys, things like that, to work outside of the divorce or litigation framework. So.
Yeah, we always want the call first, but you're right, it may be some planning. I mean, we'll do premarital agreements, postmarital agreements, but more complex estate planning, we may be sending that or maybe a consult and give them a couple referrals. Just sort of depends on the situation, but we always want to be the first call. And then you're right, a lot of times, we're like you though, a lot of times we do those consults where somebody's thinking about it or planning about it. A lot of times it's because it's time to file or they've been sued for divorce or custody situation. And then, yeah, we're like you. A lot of times, hopefully we're the only time, somebody's just in my office one time. There are families that they come back multiple times just because of the nature of things. Well, so turning to the topic of sort of businesses and divorce, what do do you get brought in on divorces? I know we brought you in on a variety of different legal matters, but what's that look like in your practice?
I do, yeah, and I have with you on a number of occasions, and I always appreciate that. One of the things that always strikes me every time I get involved in a case with you is, how effective an attorney you are. You think on your feet as well as anybody I've ever seen in my career. But the other thing that always strikes me is how emotional and difficult the cases that you handle are, and I know that's got to be tough. I mean, I know you're good at it, but it always strikes me as that. But I do get involved on cases, and I get involved in cases typically when there is property owned by the marital estate. It's usually a business or significant assets. So I'll come in and work on more of a civil piece side. And for instance, I have a client who was sued in Texas related to a business deal a few years ago, and then a year later she filed for divorce up in North Carolina. And the intellectual property and the other property of the marriage was worth tens of millions of dollars. Well, in North Carolina, you go have a trial on the value of the assets and then to determine how they're going to be distributed. And so I went up and tried the valuation piece of the case over 3 days. That was really fascinating. It was a lot of fun. But that's an example of a divorce where I got involved, where really the issues had nothing to do with the marriage or custody. It was truly just about the value of patents and art and horses and all these things. And every issue was contested. So it was expert testimony on every issue. It was witnesses on every issue. And so, that's a good example of issues inside of a divorce case that really aren't divorce, if that makes sense.
What's that look like? Because it probably, it's outside the divorce context, probably looks a lot like within the divorce context, but litigating business valuation. I mean, I always tell clients when they come in, when we're dividing a property, we're just building a spreadsheet, right? And we're building a spreadsheet which lists all y'all's assets. And then the question one is character, which is kind of a unique family law question. Is it separate or is it community property? But if it's community, then it's a value. And value gets litigated in the divorce context, but value lot gets litigated in your context. So what's that look like, trying a valuation case from your perspective?
Every business not every business is different, but most businesses are different. And the value of a business can vary pretty wildly based on control of the entity. So if I have 10% ownership of an entity versus owning 90%, then I'm likely, if I have 10%, to have a lot less control. And so there's a lot of factors that one would take into account when valuing a business. Most businesses that are subject of a divorce or the disputes that I handle are not publicly traded. So you have to go in. The market doesn't value the business for you. A professional's got to go do it. And so that is a big part of my practice, is determining the value of whatever it is we're fighting over. And I know it is for you too. And so the approach that we use, there's different kinds of approaches. cost approach, market approach, income approach, and these are technical terms. The approach we use depends on the kind of business, what side of the dispute you're on, how you want to litigate your case, basically. And so it can be very, very complex, which is hard, especially if you have a jury or a judge who's never seen this kind of dispute before. So,
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the jury, but then first of all, you ever shocked, because I always am, how you can have two and sometimes two very well qualified, sometimes not very well qualified on one side or the other, but two very well qualified CPAs spit out completely different, radically different numbers for the value of something.
I mean, it is shocking. It is shocking, especially if the opposing counsel has a financial expert that I have used in the past.
Right.
I look at this person and I think, wait a minute, you always get it right. But on this one, you seem to be getting it way wrong, and I can't figure it out. But no, it's always shocking to me. It's always shocking to me. And that, I guess, for the most part, it's an art and not a science, right? Although maybe it should be a science or just math.
I guess so. I mean, I know it's frustrating for my clients, particularly because if you're doing it, it's a business owner versus a business owner. So he or she knows the business. For me, I think it's sometimes difficult explaining to the business owner. First of all, it's difficult to explain to him or her. They're not going to just take your word for it, right? Because I have so many business owner clients just begging me. It's like, I don't understand. Why won't she take this deal? Or why won't he take this deal? I'm telling y'all, I know what this is worth. It's my business. And I'm offering you a deal that's better than it's worth. And just to buy out and get done with this god-awful divorce, and telling them sort of two things. One, sorry, you're going through a divorce, right or wrong. Nobody, the other side just doesn't trust you right now. And that's perfectly natural. But two, look out, because if you don't do this right and you don't get the right experts involved, you're going to see numbers that shock you. And sometimes it's from really good experts on the other side. And sometimes, frankly, somebody pulls out an expert that that may not be as qualified and may be spitting out crazier numbers. And then you got to go, this poor spouse, by the way, on the other side, looking at these crazy numbers and, because they've got an expert that just gets it wrong, like you said, and then we got to go fight that. And that can be very difficult to do.
That's an interesting point, and it is almost always true. And the case that I tried in North Carolina last year, we were valuing patents that were either worth numerous millions of dollars or worth almost zero, or somewhere in between. And our expert said, well, they were either worth multiples of millions or maybe $1 million or $1.5 million, somewhere like that, depending on certain factors. An opposing counsel's expert or opposing party's expert said they were basically worth zero. And that was an example of an expert being so unreasonable that the person looking so unreasonable and outside the box that could have been accurate under certain analysis. It just sounded so inaccurate at first blush that I think that expert lost credibility. So I agree. You can get these experts that seem like, oh my God, where did you come up with that? But hopefully when that happens and it's not legitimate, the trier of fact will see through it. And that's, in my experience, that's usually the case. And Jake, I was going to raise one other point. One of the things that always is my practice is different than yours, and why I think yours is so difficult is when I'm dealing with a business split up, I have partners who are angry at one another typically, but it's really about money. In yours, it is about the relationship some, but mostly about money. In your cases, it's about everything. It's about history of a personal relationship, a business relationship. Does that make it 10 times harder in your view?
It's hard to focus for the client, right? It's just there's so much more that you're dealing with, and even the divorce without kids, you're dealing with the death of a relationship. You're feeling like a failure, or you're feeling hurt or attacked or whatever. And that just makes it that much more difficult. I mean, people ask me all the time, for example, if I represented myself in my divorce. And I said, no way, because I would be horrible at it. Because I think I'm a great lawyer, but I would be horrible at representing myself because it's very emotional, very difficult. So we do have that sort of addition. And as a family lawyer, our job is to obviously be empathetic and sympathetic to the client, going through that emotion, but then also help them focus on, I know this is difficult. I know this is emotional. Here's the really kind of bland, dry business decision that you have to make in dividing up your marital estate. It's just like I've talked about this in other podcasts. I tell my kids, what dad does is I deal with the legal side of a divorce, right? There's lots of things that go into a marriage. There's romantic, sexual, raising kids, family, everything that goes into a marriage. It's a commitment. But what dad does is I deal with the legal side of it. And the legal side can be very dry as far as what a court or jury can or cannot do. And that's hard to focus on given everything that's going on with the relationship. Some clients know, sometimes it's just, all right, let's divide our crap up and we disagree with how it looks. So let's go figure that out. And, I guess this is to another point that I do think is important to make. I do have clients, and shockingly, this is shocking to a lot of people, is even in custody cases, I have clients that can just have a good faith dispute and not hate each other over it. That they could just have a disagreement about what the value of their estate is, or really even it's harder with kids, but to have a good faith disagreement about what they need with their kids and not hate each other over it. And that's particularly difficult to do. And particularly difficult when the other side is doing a lot of hateable things. Extremely. I mean, because I wouldn't be able to do it. But sometimes they can, or at least sort of help manage it. Because at the end of the day, a divorce can be as bland as a jury being charged with what is the fair market value of this business, and fair market value is what a willing buyer is willing to pay a willing seller under no compulsion to buy and no compulsion to sell. There you go. Your whole business that you built up over a 25-year marriage and a relationship boiled down to a single question that a jury has to answer, and then a judge divides it up and says, see you later, down on to the next case. It adds a complexity to it that you have to be aware of. Talk to me about, by the way, on, I was going to say, too, when you make the point of an expert getting up and saying zero, I always think that's interesting because, people do that in the divorce context where husband or wife will come in and say, it's worth zero, it's worth nothing. And, the fun cross-examination question always, or in deposition or in court is like, well, great, I've got $1,000 right here. I'll write you a check for it. You're up $1,000 because it's worth zero. I'll take it.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, that sometimes shakes the loose a little bit. How do you find juries following this stuff? I'm always really complimentary of the juries dealing with custody, complex business stuff, because I think they try really hard. But what's been your experience if a jury's asked the question of valuing a business? What's that like?
Well, my experience with juries is they work really hard to do a good job to come to the right and fair result, and they do work really hard. Now, some jurors work harder than others. Some jurors pay more attention than others. But as a litigator, I view my job is to be a sincere person, to just be who I am, and then try to explain to the jury the problem of the case or the story of the case, the problem within the story of the case, in an understandable and linear way. So a simple, linear way, explain it, and provide texture by with witnesses and documents and all the things that we use as evidence. And jurors, I think, tend to follow it and try to understand and do a good job of it. Now, the inherent fear for a professional in that is that you don't know what your jury is going to look like until the jury has been seated. You have a little bit of control, but not much. And so you don't know how these people view the world or how they think, and so that's very scary for people. And but I have faith in the jury system, and I think it's a good system, and so I have confidence in it. But for a lot of people, do find that pretty scary, and that's particularly true the more that's at stake, and the more complex the problem. So if you've got $1 billion at stake in a very complex business dispute, those cases very rarely get tried because there's just too much at stake and there's too much risk. And so it's, but anyway, I'm a big believer in juries. So, and it sounds like you are too, Jake.
Yeah, same. I think that the trial that you had finished up, I think you're outside Laura Livingston's court now that I'm remembering it, on the third floor after y'all had just tried. They have some, I think it was a jewelry store issue.
Mexicans, antique Mexican silver from Mexico, right?
You're right. That is correct.
I was going to tell you one anecdote. So my job in that case was to explain to the jury why this Mexican antique silver from the desert was these little, but I consider, small trinkets in some cases, are worth a lot of money. Whereas to the average person walking down the street, they seem worthless, like garage sale items. And so that was expert intensive and a fun one because, who gets to try a case over Mexican silver? But the jury was really attentive and enjoyed it too. So that was the case we met on. That's right.
Yeah. See, it's all coming back. Well, so, we have lawyers listening to the podcast. We have people listening to the podcast that may need a lawyer in a business dispute, or family lawyers that need to pull you in and deal with valuation issues. So what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Well, then go to the website, snellfirm.com, SNELLFIRM.com, and all our information is there. Just Google Jason Snell, and it's a small town. You'll find us. So
great. Well, that's we'll wrap up with that then, and that's what we have for today. So if you've liked what you've heard, do us a favor, like always, and leave us a review. We appreciate all the feedback, especially any feedback that helps us better the podcast. And like we said, if you're interested in reaching out to Jason, he just provided his website. We're going to provide that in the description as well. And you can always reach out to our firm if you need Jason's contact. So thanks for listening, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks for our next episode regarding divorces with shared businesses.
Thanks for having me on.
For information about the topics covered in today's episode and more, you can visit our website at waltersgilbreath.com. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of For Better, Worse, or Divorce, where we post new episodes every first and third Wednesday. Do you have a topic you want discussed or a question for our hosts? Email us at podcast@waltersgilbreath.com. Thanks for listening. Until next time.